بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is Abdurrahman Musa from Birmingham, UK, coming to you from iPersonalEnrichment.com. In verse 130 in Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَنْ يَرْغَبُ عَنْ مِلَّةِ إِبْرَاهِيمَ إِلَّا مَنْ سَفِهَ نَفْسَهُ. Who is it that goes astray from the way of the Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, except he who disrespects or belittles himself? And then 2 verses later, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes how Ibrahim and Yaqub, both of them, said to their children, إِنَّ اللَّهَ اصْطَفَى لَكُمُ الدِّينَ فَلَا تَمُوتُنَّ إِلَّا وَأَنْتُمْ مُسْلِمُونَ. Allah has purified and chosen for you this deen, so do not die unless you are Muslims. I.e., do not die except that you are Muslims. Now subhanAllah, how was it that we were brought up with Islam? Most people are brought up, if you don't pray, you'll go to hell. If you don't fast, you'll go to hell. If you lie, you'll go to hell. If you eat PIG, you'll go to hell. If you do this, you'll go to hell. It's always the stick, the stick, the stick, the stick. And yet Sayyidina Ibrahim and Sayyidina Yaqub, both of these prophets, they say to their children, do not die except on Islam. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has purified it and chosen it for you. I.e., it's like when you say to someone, oh, there's a sale on, make sure you don't miss out on it, it ends tomorrow. It's the same thing. He's saying to, they're saying to their sons, they're saying to their children, sons and daughters, they're saying, do not, make sure you don't miss this opportunity. Can you see how it's a carrot and not the stick approach? It's towards as opposed to away from. And this is very important. Now the first verse that I mentioned, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, who is it that strays away from the deen of Ibrahim alayhi salam, except those that disrespect and belittle themselves? And if you remember previously we talked that there were 3 whims, or I mentioned 3 whims. The first is the whim to control, the second is the whim for approval, and the third is the whim for security. Now I want to go deeper into the whim of approval and what it does and the consequences that it has when you whim for such a thing. And this is why I mentioned those 2 ayahs. First of all, he disrespects himself, i.e. he does not approve of himself. He does not give himself the right that is due. He disrespects it. The one that stays away from or goes astray from the deen of Sayyidina Ibrahim. And secondly, how both of these prophets, Ibrahim and Yaqub, said to their children. Now the assumption here is that they value their children and they know that their children value themselves. So they say, don't miss out on this opportunity. This is the exact opposite of original sin. You're dirty, you're sinful, make sure you cleanse. This is not the case. No, we are to value ourselves, and as such we are to wish for ourselves what is best. And this is why this advice was given by both of these prophets. In a hadith narrated about the Prophet ﷺ, narrated in Ibn Hibban, the Prophet ﷺ describes how if someone angers Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in order to please the people, if someone angers Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in order to please the people, then what happens? Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be angry with him. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the owner of all the hearts, the owner of everything, will make it so that those people that the person whimmed approval from, those people will hate and will also disapprove and be angered by the person who was seeking their approval in the first place. And then the Prophet ﷺ describes another person, and he says, and yet the person who wants to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but this angers the people. He's not going out of his way to anger the people, but he just wants to please Allah. But for some reason, the people are angered. وَمَا نَقْمُ مِنْهُمْ إِلَّا أَنْ يُؤْمِنُوا بِاللَّهِ عَزِيزِ الْحَمِيدِ. They do not hate in them except that they believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from the 7th heaven loves this person, and then He makes everyone else that was angered by him or disapproving of him or hateful of him for pleasing Allah, He makes them be happy and loving and approving of him. SubhanAllah, if you've ever been in a situation where you've done something because you've been afraid what people might say. So, you know, a brother or a sister might go to the pub, might sit on a table where other people are drinking alcohol. And you know what happens? The same people that every single day will ask you, come out with us, come out with us. Why are you not coming out? Just have some orange juice, it's not a problem. This is what they'll say. And yet when you go, the first people to say to you, isn't this against your religion? Are the very same people that invited you. The people that will lead you on into haram. Once you have made them approve, they will be the first to turn around and disapprove of you. You see how this hadith applies in our lives? Up till now, I've described what happens when someone is willing for the approval of others. What about when we lack approval for ourselves? Now, this is a very, very, very subtle distinction. A very subtle distinction. But when you approve of yourself, first of all, you stop seeking the approval of others. Actually, the reason why we seek approval of others is because once others approve of us, we begin to approve of ourselves. So if you can approve of yourself, you will not need the approval of others, and then you move into freedom. You move into true freedom. Now, because people disapprove of themselves, what they do is they set for themselves goals. Now, that doesn't mean that if you set a goal, you disapprove of yourself, but this is usually done by people that disapprove of themselves specifically. So I disapprove of myself, so what should I do to make myself feel better? Let me give myself a goal. When I achieve the goal, I will feel better. I will love myself. So they'll have goals. I want to progress in my career. Okay, by August, I want to be promoted. I will feel rubbish until August, I get promoted, then I will feel good and I will approve of myself. I want a new car. Let me disapprove of myself, continue disapproving of myself until I get a new car. Once I've got the new car, I will approve of myself. You see how it works? It's based upon, right now I have the stick and the carrot is there. And what happens is that, of course, the disapproval doesn't really, disapproval comes from within and approval comes from within. Like I said, when you think that other people disapprove of you and you want their approval, really it's because you disapprove of yourself in the first place. If you had full approval of yourself, you would not need them to approve of you. Now, if you had approval of yourself, you would actually achieve your goals far quicker. Far quicker. Because here's the thing, if you disapprove of yourself, you will sabotage your own goals. Now, I know I just said 2 minutes ago, or a few seconds ago, that people will set up goals such that they can accomplish those goals so that they can approve of themselves. But if they don't approve of themselves, inside they have this nagging feeling that they do not deserve the goal. So they have disapproved of themselves, and instead of just letting go of that, instead of deciding not to disapprove of themselves, they then attach their disapproval to an external factor. But because they disapprove of themselves, they will sabotage themselves such that they do not achieve this goal that they had set out for themselves so that they could approve of themselves. And of course, after they've sabotaged themselves and they've not achieved the goal, they feel like a failure, and then they disapprove of themselves even more. And you see how ridiculous the whole situation is? But this is why people sabotage themselves. So, can you see how resistance, again, it's this theme, and I mention this again and again and again, where to whim for dunya actually gets in the way of you achieving dunya. Can you see that? أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم جزاكم الله خيرا السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.